Good. All right. At this time, good to see everybody again. I hope you all are doing well. I'd like to call to order the November meeting of the Pawleys Island Town Council. And the first order of business today is to listen to any public comments that were submitted through email to the town. Ryan, do we have any of those today?
We do. So we have two. The first one comes from the owners of 213 Atlantic Avenue. I'll send this to everyone after the meeting, but it says, we are requesting that you address the flooding problem due to rains on Atlantic Avenue between 2nd and 3rd Streets. The road, as well as many properties, have been flooding, and the flooding in this area has become extreme this summer and fall. There are no drain basins in the area of Atlantic Avenue. The flooding is not only causing health problems, but has the potential to hurt our rentals. We have sent in a maintenance request to SCDOT about this problem. We think it should be to the benefit of not only the property owners along this part of Atlantic, but to all of Pawleys Island, if our mayor and town council would follow up with them to help alleviate this issue. Thank you for this matter. Ann Helis and Mary T. Johnson, owners of 213 Atlantic Avenue.
Okay. Okay. I think I want to comment, make a few comments about that. Is there another one? Are there two? Did you say there are two?
Yeah,
two?
Just one more.
Okay. I think we all see lately with the king tides and some of the rains that we've definitely experienced flooding, and it gets worse year after year. Not only that, when we had our strategic planning meeting earlier this year, of the 4 top priorities, one of the ones we mentioned was flooding and drainage on the town of Pawleys. I spoke to Timmy Britt last week with SCDOT to talk about some ideas and thoughts about what we may or may not be able to do. To me, to resolve this flooding issue, it's kind of a combination of the flooding and the drainage. They kind of go hand in hand. And I know Rocky has spent a good bit of time looking at drainage and how we can improve that. And that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit as we get into this meeting. So it is a top priority. It's Mother Nature. It's difficult. It's something we've dealt with for years. It's going to take some time and effort and coordination with SCDOT and the town itself to get it done. But I do think it's in our front view, something we know is a priority and something we're going to begin working on diligently. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing during this meeting to address that. Anybody else have comments on that? All right. What's the second one?
So the second one is from Henry Thomas of 181 Atlantic Avenue, and it is a Pawleys Island voters petition, is what it is titled. It says, Pawleys Island was embarrassed, ashamed, and angry before Mayor Henry's recent racial rant. Henry does not represent Pawleys Island. Henry does not even live here. Henry's contentious election is just one example of his contentious leadership. Henry must resign today. A small group has control of Town Hall, a private beach, a gated community, a non-transparent beach renourishment plan, suing property owners for easements through eminent domain, and the mayor's strategic plan are examples of governance and leadership gone wrong. Pawleys Island is now broke, has a $2.8 million debt, and no income. A vote of town council must be added to the next meeting agenda. Not voting is a statement of support for Mayor Henry. The Pawleys Island voters petition will be signed by 15% of the voters at the last election if town council fails to act today. So little note on my end, this petition's been floating around for probably the last 2 months. And I don't know what a lot of what he's talking about in here, the non-transparency, the gated communities, I don't know what he's talking about. But when he refers to the 15% petition rule, that does exist in the state of South Carolina. It's a way for municipalities to force their elected councils to take action on laws. So that's ordinances, whether they want one passed or if they want one rescinded. And that could be accomplished through a 15% petition that if that is achieved, then the council has 1 year to either pass it or put it up for referendum vote. Same with the law that's on the books. They either could take it off or have a referendum vote, but it does not apply to elected officials whatsoever. So whatever he's trying to do with this, that is incorrect. It's not valid. fake news, I guess. But I've talked to numerous property owners about this and tried to explain this over and over again. So most people, most people who have brought this to my attention, I've tried to make that clear. But just to make that clear to everyone who sees this, that there is no validity to that 15% rule in terms of what he wants to do.
Appreciate the clarification. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, let's move on to the agenda. Item number 3 is approval of the minutes from our last meeting in October, from October 12th. The meeting minutes were sent out by Ryan earlier today. Thanks for getting those out. I know that was you're doing double duty over there at Town Hall. So thanks for getting that out. I've had a chance to review. I didn't see any changes necessary. Anybody else have changes, modifications, additions, or a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Everybody unmuted. Have a motion. Thank you, Gary.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move to item 4A, which is the police report. Chief Fanning around today?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Chief.
How is everybody?
Good, man.
Good.
Good. You'll have the police report in front of you. Nothing extraordinary on there you're gonna find. The first week of the month, we were a little busy. We had a couple of car break-ins. We actually had a truck, a contractor's truck stolen out of a driveway on the 300 block of Myrtle. We recovered the truck. Somebody ditched it down the street, but they had stolen all the appliances and some of the items from the back of the box truck. And we have a suspect in mind, but we don't have enough evidence to get an arrest warrant yet. So we're still working on that. There was a burglary in one of the units at the Pier Village where they had gone to the beach and left their door unlocked, and they came back to find a wallet missing. Nothing else was missing. Computers and purses and all that other stuff was sitting there, but the wallet was gone. And as far as crime goes, that was pretty much it for the month.
The box truck that was stolen off the island itself.
No, it was parked in the driveway at 334 Myrtle. We believe it was one of the guys, the gentleman who owns the truck. We believe it's one of his workers. They knew where the keys were to it, and they went and moved the truck over the weekend. Moved the truck, unloaded it, and then dumped it someplace else on the island.
I got you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Chief Fanning? Thanks, Chief. Thanks for all you do, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the building report.
There's 5 items on there, which is, I believe 5 items more than we had last month, or 4 at least. But so it's picked up quite a bit, but again, nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Any question, thoughts on the building permits? If not, we'll move on to the financial report, item 4C.
So I put in your Dropbox kind of, again, a summary sheet, kind of gives you just a brief highlight of, the things that we try to keep an eye on, namely the A-tax income. So our A-tax for the month of October was 46% higher than it was for October of 2019. And that brings us up to $495,000 in A-tax revenue for the year, which is what we had budgeted exactly. So we're already at 100% of our budget amount for 2020, and we still have 2 months to go.
Great.
That is good.
Great.
State aid tax.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Now, state aid tax is a little bit behind. They should be exactly the same, but it never works out that way. And that's namely because the state, they take all that 2% that comes in, and they take a little bit off the top. I couldn't tell you what it's for. They can't really explain it to me either. And then they remit those taxes back to us. So some years they take more than others, and that's why those numbers don't necessarily go up or down in percentage the same. They should theoretically, but they don't. But otherwise, that we're at $270,000 in state aid tax income, and we had $310,000 budgeted. And we already received our last payment. Usually we get 4 quarterly payments a year. The last one we just received. So that's not going to change. So for some reason, that one's going to be about $40,000 less than what we budgeted.
Gotcha.
And then this month we'll send out the invoices for the underground wire, which is $115,000 in budgeted revenue. So that's a huge chunk of what we budget every year. So that'll have a significant impact on the numbers. Now, typically you guys get a financial report. The last 2 months have been a little bit of a work in progress because that's the only thing that I have not been able to kind of handle is plugging everything into the software that we use. We use this program called Sage. So I've been keeping track of everything. And then now I've brought on somebody that's helping me in a very, very part-time capacity. She's actually doing most of it from home now. She was recommended to me by our accountant, Stacy Moray. Rocky's familiar with her. I guess she helps him out with his books a little bit. Her name's Sandy Jerzyk. She's really good. And she gets excellent. Yeah. So she's been taking all the information that I've been doing to, accounts receivable, accounts payable for the last 2 months or month and a half. And she's now plugging it all into the software. So hopefully at the end of this month, we'll be caught up and be able to go back to those financial reports that we used to do.
Hey, Ryan, a quick question. You would anticipate maybe that the last 2 months of ATAX might make up for the 40,000 shortfall with the state?
I would think so. Yeah. Based historically on what we've done in the past in November and December, I think it'll more than make up for it. So overall, as an aggregate, those two together will end up being more than what we budgeted. The state ATAX is a little different because that's the one that's restricted to be used for a certain amount on tourism related and tourism promotion. And so that money is a little bit more tied up in the way we can use it. But yeah, I think it'll more than make up that $40,000 deficit.
Okay, thank you.
That's encouraging for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions on the financial report? Appreciate that, Ryan. Let's move on to item 5A, which is appointments to boards, commissions, and committees. Item 1 is the appointment of John LeMaster to the Planning Commission for a 3-year term expiring in November 10th, 2023. We had a couple of individuals that had expressed an interest in filling this spot. I spoke to John LeMaster last week, and Ryan, I believe you spent some time with John LeMaster as well. He's a Vandy grad, practiced law in England for a good bit of time. He's recently retired and will have more time to allocate towards helping us with the Planning Commission. And I believe he'll be a real asset to the Planning Commission and what he brings from a legal standpoint, from a sound mind. And I know he's committed to it, and I know he's going to be spending a lot more time here at Pawleys Island as well. So I would certainly endorse that, but welcome any thoughts or comments about John.
I've worked with him in the past and also his wife in real estate, and very professional.
Awesome.
Very professional.
Awesome. I would agree with that. Anybody else want to offer some comments or thoughts, or I'll entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint John LeMaster to the Planning Commission for a 3-year term.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, thank you for that. Item 5B is consideration of emergency ordinance 2020-11 to replace 2020-09, which expires November 16th, 2020. This ordinance would basically be an extension of what we've done the last several months, which in essence gives us the go-ahead to continue virtual/Zoom meetings and also allow Town Hall to continue to operate in an altered fashion. Obviously, the door's locked. You got to schedule appointments to meet. My sense would be that we probably need to continue operating this way through the end of the year. It is my hope that of January 1, we can return to some normalcy. All we see in the news lately is spike in cases and such. So we're going to err on the side of caution. So this ordinance, approval of this ordinance will allow us to continue to meet the way we have been. Any questions or comments? Or a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on emergency ordinance 2020-11? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. All right, item 5C, first reading of ordinance 2020-12, a request from Walt Niemsura and Monica Zwieber Niemsura to rezone a portion of their lot from conservation and preservation to residential, 1 acre. The property is located at 632 Pritchard Street with the tax map number that's in your packet. Ryan, you want to give us a quick overview of this one? I think we've discussed this one at the prior meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
No, you and I have discussed it, and the planning commission talked
That's
about
right.
it and it addressed it a month ago.
That's right.
So really what this comes down to, I don't know how this ever happened, but mostly every single property on this island that has a single family home is zoned R1. The only place it's not is R2. That's the medium density residential, which is the Pier Village. And then you've got the areas like the South End parking lot and all the creek lots. They're zone CP, which is conservation and preservation, which you can really only build a creek dock on it, but certainly not a single family home. But what happened was these folks bought this property about 2 years ago, and admittedly they didn't do their due diligence. Probably never thought, why would I have to check on the zoning of this? Of course, there's a house there. It would be zoned R1. The realtor didn't look into it, but after they had the house for about a year, they came to me asking me about doing some renovations and what the setbacks were and, what could they do? And I said, let me look into it. I'll get back to you. Never did I think for a second that the zoning was going to be off. So what they have is, for some reason, right down the middle of their lot, half of it is zone R1, the other half is zone CP. And that's because they're down near the boat landing. And I thought, okay, well, the only reason that would maybe take place is maybe the OCRM critical line goes through their lot. So I had them, I contacted OCRM for them. OCRM came out, they hired a surveyor. They put where the OCRM line comes across their property, not an issue at all. Comes across right at the end of their property where it butts up to the creek, like every other creek lot does. So that wasn't an issue. And I talked to the COG, the Regional Council of Governments, because they had a lot to do with our original zoning map in the mid-'80s. I said why this would have taken place, and they couldn't for the life of them figure it out. So it just seems to have been an oversight. Whoa! So what they're looking to do is, they just want to have it rezoned so that the entire parcel is R1, as opposed to having it half CP, because
What is
I'm not sure
that?
I'm
What
not
is
sure
that?
what's causing that. It ain't me.
Hey, me.
All right.
Anyway,
Might
Great
need to
man.
mute. Somebody might need to mute. Go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
it's all right. So they just, as it stands now, if their house were to be ripped down voluntarily or because of a hurricane or whatever, they wouldn't be able to rebuild a house on their lot because half of it's CP and they wouldn't have to do it. So they're just simply asking to have it all zoned R1 so that they can get what any property owner would ever want, is just to make sure and feel comfortable about, if something ever were to happen to their house, that they could rebuild on it.
Yeah, that's right.
So really, this is just more or less a housekeeping.
Clean up.
It is. So this would be, it's a rezone. So anytime you make a zoning change, it's an ordinance. So it requires 2 readings. So today would be first reading, and then there would have to be a public hearing before the second reading, which would be the December council meeting. And again, that would just, it's all a formality. I don't believe
I'll make a
anyone.
motion to have first reading tonight.
All right.
Second.
Thank
Any
you, Ashley.
discussion? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
One question, you'd mentioned that this came up with the planning commission. Did they have any wisdom, or they pretty much came down on the same position you just talked about, Ryan?
No, it was unanimous. They all voted for it. It would seem like a slam dunk. Like, you think about it, it just seems no one would want to be in that position, and there's no reason why it happened. Whatever happened was 34 years ago. No one can explain it. So,
Okay.
they were unanimous.
Yeah, I was at that same meeting, and I would concur with what Ryan said. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay, item 5D, first reading of ordinance 2020-13 and ordinance adopting the 2021 annual operating budget. Obviously, this is a similar scenario where we will have a first reading and then a second reading at the December meeting. And as we discussed at the last meeting, and as I would like to suggest that we have an offsite meeting between now and that December meeting to spend some time reviewing the 2021 annual operating budget, just to make sure we give it the diligence and the time and the consideration that it needs. Obviously, it's very important. And Ryan, I know you've done these budgets for quite a while, but it'll be a good education for us. We can, be earnest in our decisions and make sure that we're doing the right thing for 2021. It's obviously a different day and time with COVID and everything else. So do you want to spend a little time going through that this evening, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give you just a brief overview. I mean, it's very similar to 2020. I mean, I didn't really change much. Me and Mike went over it. Our 2020 budget worked pretty well for us. There's some things in there that have changed that are going to make it a lot easier for 2021. Salary on admin side will go down. So that's a change. And then, council had decided to allow council members to enroll in the healthcare plan. So that is reflected in this, along with a general donation to offset it. So that's in here. That changes the numbers a little bit. But other than that, the only thing that's added in this budget that is different from last year, and last year was strictly just operating. There was nothing in there, no special projects, nothing. It was just operate and what was required to operate the day-to-day activities of the town. So the only thing that is in here, if you look under capital outlay for the police department, we did include 2 items, and those are a new vehicle. That's something that we've passed over and pushed down the road. Typically when we do it every other year. We pushed it down the road 2 years ago and then did it again last year. So it's way overdue. And then now with a larger beach, a beach where we can actually go up and down with a vehicle. We've got the ATV, but the ATV is at the point, it has a shelf life about 5 or 6 years, but in the harsh conditions, it always rusts out about this time, which the bottom of it is just falling out. So we're at a position where, we're due for another ATV. And now that we can go up and down the beach and don't have to worry about traversing groins and not be able to go from one end to the other, we're able to do that now. I believe the chief believes, and I mean, hopefully you guys share our opinion. It's ultimately up to you, but that we get not just an ATV, but something similar to what Georgetown County has to patrol the Litchfield beaches in Garden City, what Midway has when they have to do work on the beach, or one of those kind of gator type pieces of equipment that is much like an ATV, but it holds 1 or 2 seats and then a small truck bed in the back, which would be very, very useful for a lot of things that we run into in the summer months. So that is in there. So that's about $58,000 that's called out in the budget under the line item capital outlay under the police department. And there's a separate note at the back that explains exactly what all that goes to. But other than that, that is the only thing that was added above and beyond from last year. And if you take the 2 budgets, if you take those items out and just compare this year's budget without the capital outlay increase and compare it to last year, I mean it's pretty much the same. I mean, it hasn't gone up at all.
Hey, Ron, can you confirm that the net impact of the decision to allow council members to participate in the municipal health insurance, the net impact on the budget is 0, correct?
Yep, zero-sum game. As much as I put in for covering that cost, it's equal out by a donation. So it's definitely 0.
Okay, thanks.
Brian, I have a couple of questions. The mule 4-wheeler, was that not, and I could be wrong, I could get it mixed up with the jet ski. Did not the Pawleys Island Civic Association donate the jet ski or the mule to us?
Yeah, it was the jet ski. They paid for the jet ski, and that was about what, 4 years ago? About 4 years ago. ATV we purchased. The town purchased. I want to say about 5 years ago. Yeah. 6.
Any chance, do you think, that the Civic Association would be inclined to produce another donation, perhaps?
I mean,
And if not, is that a vehicle that we can purchase, like through the state and get special pricing?
there is special pricing. I don't know if the one model that they have priced out that I found under the state contract, I don't know if that's.
Side-by-side, there's no state contract.
Okay. So the ATV, there is a state contract. The side-by-side or the gator, or whatever you want to call it, there is not. There is not a state contract.
Mark Marshall is giving us a law enforcement discount.
So Mike has been able to get a law enforcement discount with the contractor that he has gotten pricing from. Regardless of, I mean, at this point, it's all theoretical and just we go out and get quotes for the things that we want to put in there. Clearly, if we got to the point where it was approved and then comes the time to actually go purchase it, we would get the required, 3 competitive bids and make sure it was, the best price. But as Sarah, in terms of your question about the Civic Association, yeah, I mean, of course we could ask. I hate to be presumptuous and think that, we're going to rely on, some other entity to pay for it. So that's why I start here. If that's, ultimately the way council wants us to go, then certainly we'll pursue it. But this is where we're starting.
Fair
Well, I
enough.
think obviously the Civic Association realizes that it would be to the benefit of everybody and everybody on the island. The other question I had too, should we not include an administrative salary in the 21 budget? I mean, I know we anticipate hiring somebody, so shouldn't we put that in there? And then the other question was, how many council members did participate in the health insurance?
Just one. I mean, numerous people, everyone asked questions that was interested in it. So, I mean, there were 3 that asked a lot of questions. Ultimately, at the end of the day, only one decided to take it. But hey, I mean, to me, it's really good insurance. And if you're in a position, to take it and, like Rocky was saying, it's a zero-sum game. So to me, it's why wouldn't you take it? But yeah, just one. And that could change next year. And open enrollment's in October. So if next year more want to jump in, it's established and it's an option and we can plan for it. Instead of saying, hey, I know one's been interested in the past, but it is October. Do you think anyone would be interested this year? Kind of got thrown together. But now we know that, this is the policy of the town council. And, I'll make sure everyone knows come July, August, start thinking about it because October, it's an opportunity if you want to take it.
Yeah, I just didn't have time, kind of thing, to compare. The
understand.
administrative salary, should we not include that?
No, I did include it.
It's
And
in
I
Oh,
did
I'm
include it.
sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, so it's about $10,000 less than it was last year. And it's actually more than that because that position, that salary of that position was split in half. So half of it gets paid out of admin position under admin salary, and then under the police department, we have salaries of the law enforcement, the actual
Admin,
police officer.
okay.
We have a police admin. So it's about $20,000 less than what we had previously. So it's in there. It's a
Okay.
placeholder. Yeah, and I think that'll be more than enough to cover. I'm just not, I've talked to Brian about this. I'm just not in a rush to fill that spot right now because I've been able to fairly, I don't want to say easily, but I've been able to kind of assume all those things. A lot of them are on autopilot, and it's just a matter of clicking a few buttons at this point. Given the way we're operating with COVID and not having the doors open to the public, it makes it's very doable because everyone's making an appointment anyway. If I had the public just coming in randomly, it would be very hard to do. In fact, I don't think I'd be able to do it. But given that, for at least a year, we're gonna be operating that way, I can make it work. There's no reason to go spend the money right now if we're not absolutely having to do so. And, given all that I know now that I didn't know 2 months ago, the scope of work or the responsibilities of that position, my opinion on what they should be have greatly changed from what I thought they would have been 2 months ago.
Great.
So the highlight basically is that the budget for 2021 is essentially going to mirror the budget for 2020, with the exception of a new vehicle for the police department, which we'll discuss, and a Gator or side-by-side upgrade from the ATV that we're currently using that is getting worn out. So we can discuss that some more at our offsite. I just wanted to throw some dates out on number one and number two, say that, the budget we could spend some time on, but I'd also like to spend some time on the whole flooding and drainage issue that was brought up in public comments and has been something that we all decided was a top priority for 2021 and beyond. And then secondly, in that meeting, to discuss future funding. I know that was also one of our top four priorities. So we need to start getting serious about that and having some discussion of what that looks like and where funding for significant projects like creek dredging and roads and such are going to come from. So I shot some dates out to you guys earlier today and last week. December 3rd, 4th, or December 10th and 11th, or two sets of dates that are prior to our December meeting. You guys have any preference on those dates? I can do any of those, December 3 or 4, December 10, 11. That's I think those are Thursday, Fridays.
I would prefer 10, 11 if possible.
Anybody have a conflict with 10, 11? I prefer one over the other.
I would
Yeah.
prefer Thursday than Friday.
Okay. December 10th work for everybody?
Yes.
All right,
that's
let's
good
lock
for me.
that in. We'll nail a specific location. Obviously, we'll give the public notice on time and location of that. Appreciate you guys being willing to take the time to do it. All these are important items, especially the 2021 budget. Any other comments or thoughts on the budget before we move on to our final item?
Yeah, I would like Chief or whoever's looking into alternative vehicle to look at some other vehicles as well. For example, I had a 4-wheel drive golf cart, cost about $8,000, and it works great. And also, I'm not a big fan of the 4-wheeler because I've seen it go in front of my house as many as 8 times in a day, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And to me, it just disrupts beach time in some ways. I understand the need at times, but to me, there doesn't appear to be like any set of rules. They're just as haphazard. They're out there sometimes, and sometimes you don't see them at all. But I've also seen the 4-wheeler on the north end as far out on the sandbar as you could go, and nobody was around. And we all know that they're on salt water. And so I would ask the chief to tell us how they're going to maintain it. When they get back, is there a protocol for whoever drove it to clean it and get the salt water off of it? That's a big investment. I'll give you another example. I bought a used Gator last month that was 12 years old, and it runs great. So I don't really agree that you get 5 years use out of it. I think you can probably get more. And another thing, Chief, since you're listening, I get my truck washed over at the new car wash, and twice in the last couple of months, I've seen the South Carolina Highway Patrol there and the Sheriff's Department. And I asked them, and they get a great discount. Doesn't cost much to run your cars through there. I'd like for you to look into that as well, so we don't get salt water on that.
We already have the fleet package with the car wash. We've had it for a couple of months now. So we've already taken over there 2 or 3 times a week, each car, trying to maintain that. As far as a golf cart's just not going to work on the beach for us. It's just not, a golf cart's just not feasible for that. It's going to get stuck in the sand. It's not designed for the soft sand.
Well, they make those big 4-wheel drive ones for like hunting in and stuff. So I know they're out there. I can't remember one of them's called the Bad Boy. But they're out there. They're available. You can look into it, and I think there's some that would probably work, or at least worth looking into.
Well, so the previous, as I looked at the previous 2 4-wheelers we had, they lasted between 4 and 5 years. and we were keeping them over at the Pier Village. And then about 6, 7 years ago, we built that shed over there, and we were putting the four-wheeler in there. And, you know, I stressed to the guys to make sure they clean out underneath it every time they take it out. And so we've gotten actually 6 years out of this particular ATV. So having the enclosure plus the extra washing has given us an extra 1.5 to 2 years on this one. So, and normally we would have purchased these ATVs on an off season in between purchasing 2 regular patrol vehicles. And since we had put the patrol vehicle off, it kind of both falls on the same year. So that's one of the unfortunate consequences of that.
Well, how about we do this? I think those are good suggestions, Gary. Why don't we bring some of those to our December 10th meeting as far as other options and whether they're are not recommended for that particular use, and we can make some decisions. Obviously, we got a lot more discussed there, but that's obviously a central point of discussion for December 10th. And let's just bring some options to talk about there. What other questions or thoughts about the budget for 2021? All right, we'll need a motion and a second to pass the first reading of the ordinance.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. All right, our last item of the evening on the agenda is item 5E, which is the discussion and possible action on entering into an agreement with third-party contractor to provide building department services for the town. We discussed this some at the last meeting. Ryan, I know this is an area where obviously you field all of the permits, questions from the property owners. I know you've worked with the county quite a while. I certainly maintain that there is some merit in doing this, but I'd like to hear a little more from you, just a little more. I know we discussed this last time. And I'd like to entertain any questions you guys have for Ryan so we can either decide to move this direction or put it on the back burner indefinitely. So, Ryan, if you just want to share a few thoughts or if anybody has questions about it, we can open that way.
Just to make a few points. So number one, I mean, this has nothing to do with revenue generation. I mean, it would result in a little bit of revenue, which is not a bad thing, but that's not what is driving this. It's not going to ever be a huge moneymaker. It's going to ebb and flow as there are years that we have a lot of new construction, kind of like this year. We have years where we have one or sometimes no homes built. So again, it's not about the money though. And it's, you know, I know last month, Gary had said something about he'd never heard a homeowner or somebody complain about the interaction or dealing with the county. And I didn't think about it much at the time, but as I thought about it, I was like, it has nothing to do with the county and their customer service or their interacting with the public. I mean, that's not the problem either. I've never had anyone complain to me saying, other than it takes a long time to get a permit, which obviously, we could improve on that. But it's more about enforcement, and there are certain things that we have on our books that are different than the county, different than a lot of places. And since they enforce our building laws for us, it's incumbent upon them to make sure that they catch all this stuff. And I'm constantly finding myself in a position where it slips through the cracks, and then I'm the one who's got to be the bearer of bad news. When the way it's set up, really I shouldn't have anything to do with it other than the zoning review. But if they're giving up permits prior than I can even look at a set of plans for zoning review, none of it works. So the thing that I'm trying to avoid is, number one, it'll work better. It'll work better for us. We'll have more control over it. I don't want to have something that we do that puts us, violating our CRS program with FEMA. We get audited every 5 years to make sure that we're actually enforcing all of our floodplain management laws that we have on the books. The more restrictive stuff we put on the books, the more points we get. The more points we get, the larger the discount it is on the flood insurance premiums for everyone within our jurisdiction. I'm actually going through that cycle visit right now. And if they were to go through and catch something that, slipped through the cracks, then we're at risk of losing those points because we're not actually enforcing the rules and the laws that we're getting credit for, if that makes sense. So it's not a huge problem, but if one or two slips through the crack and they randomly grab projects that have been completed over the last 5 years since our last cycle visit, if one of them happens to be one of those ones that slips through the cracks, well, they're going to think that's reflective of what we do as a whole, and it's just simply not. But at the end of the day, Georgetown County, they're good people over there, but I feel they're understaffed. I mean, they've got 4 or 5 inspectors to handle an entire county. It seems like a lot of work, and we're just kind of off in the corner and we're an afterthought. We're not on the road to somewhere, so they only know about stuff if we see it and then we tell them that they have to come out, and then they'll usually work it around their schedule the next time one of their inspectors is in the neighborhood. So it's at the end of the day, it's just about better service, making sure everything's enforced properly, and it doesn't hurt that we do get to keep 20% of the permit fees as opposed to 0, which we're giving them 100% right now. And then just to give you an idea, like permitting, nothing changes about what requires a permit and what doesn't. I mean, it's all the same. I mean, the only thing we're changing is, instead of the county who now does the permit, issues the permits for us, then they go do the plan review if it's required. A lot of the time it's not, it's only for new construction. And then they do the building inspections, either through a new construction or at the end of something like building a new walkway on the beach side. A lot of the time, they issue a permit, they charge the money, and then there's no actual inspection that takes place. So that makes you wonder, what are we paying for? Or what is the property owner or contractor paying for? But really all we're asking to do, instead of paying the county to do a service, we're just replacing it with another company who is for profit. That's what business is. And replacing it with them. And they would issue the permits for us. They would do the inspections. And they do our plan review when it's new construction. And I just want to show you kind of what they do for other jurisdictions. If I can pull this up. So this is the website for, can you guys see the website that I'm showing you?
Yes.
Okay. This is the city of Inman. They do the inspections and all. They do the building and department services for the city of Inman. You go to their website. I mean, this is how you get a permit through them. So, and you can see this takes you to their website, and you can see the other towns that they currently work for. All very small towns, much like us. So, and those are towns that are going to typically want to do something like this, because the larger you are, the more likely you are to have your own building department staff. But so it takes you to their website, and then you just click on Inman. In our case, it would be town of Pawleys Island if we were to go this route, and then it pulls it up. And if you're going to get a permit, you just click on whatever it is you need a permit for. You click on it, and then everything is right there. You just fill it out on their website, and you pay for it on the website, and the permit is submitted that way. So it's more professional. At the end of the day, it's a lot more convenient for the end user, the person who's actually trying to get the permit, instead of having to drive all the way to Georgetown, wait in line, just submit all your stuff and get a permit that way. So this way, if someone knows they're going to do the work tomorrow, they can go online the night before or even that morning and get a permit issued. And it's that simple. So I just think it's nothing to do with revenue, and I just think at the end of the day, having dealing with this and seeing it the way it goes for the last 7 years, I just really feel this would be the best way to do this. And if it doesn't work out, then 2 years we can go back to doing it the way we did it before.
Does Georgetown County offer an online service like that, or is it all in person?
In person.
Okay.
I mean, I think you can call up and.
And once you submit an application like that, fill it out, pay for it, is the permit issued, or is there a period of time where they have to evaluate, figure out whether it's legit? And then
if it's something simple like cookie cutter, then it would be issued like immediately. If it's something that required a plan
Visit.
review, like a construction, things where they'd have to look at a set of plans.
Gotcha.
Go over it, make sure what they're doing meets building code. Well, then that would take some time. But right now I could tell you to get a new construction permit for a single family house, it's running 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes more. We would be able to cut that in half doing it this way.
So Ryan, a question that I've never really understood. Who makes the decision? Is it the county or is it a statewide thing or even a Fed thing as to what actions on the homeowner's part, aside from new build, require permits? What sort of work on your property requires permit? Who makes the decision about what is in that list?
So it's required based on the residential building code or the international building code. So every municipality in the state of South Carolina adopts the state building code, which is the state's residential building code. So we all have the same exact building code. We don't have the same kind of stuff that's built in our jurisdiction. Some have high-rise condo buildings and things of that nature. We don't. So there's certain things that other places deal with that we don't. But at the end of the day, if it's the same everywhere. So it's that building code that says whether or not you need an inspector to come out and look it over, and whether or not it requires a permit. In our own Unified Development Code, we have a section, which I sent it to Gary last week. We have a section that's, instead of saying these are all the things that require a permit, it's a section that says these are the things that don't require a permit. And there are a lot of minor electric stuff, like, swapping out some outlets or something like that in your house. That's not going to require a permit. You're going to, do some, replace some water piping up to a, water heater or something like that. That's not going to require a building permit. But, pretty much anything that you're changing, anything structural, it's going to require a permit. And that's, again,
Sorry. So that list of exclusions, would that be the same exclusions that you would find in any municipality in the state, or do we have the authority to declare some of those?
No, if it requires a permit based on the residential building code, it needs a permit. There's nothing we can do to say it doesn't. But there are things like, so just give you a few weird things that we have, like driveways. We don't allow driveways to be constructed of impervious surfaces. So we have an ordinance, local law, that says driveways can only be constructed of gravel, crushed stone. We allow like a paver system as long as they're separated by permeable material, and it's space between those bricks. Anyway, so we require a permit, a building permit. It's more of a development permit before anyone does a driveway, just so we can make sure that they do it according to the law. Because the last thing we want to do is have them go put in a concrete driveway and then have them rip it all out. A simple, just going and getting that permit, it saved them from doing something that's out of line with our local laws. So things like that. We've got restrictions on things that, like those widow walks that you do on the top of the house. We restrict the size of those. What we allow underneath an elevated structure, that's a little different than anywhere else. There's things like a roof. A lot of places don't require a building permit for replacing shingles on a roof. We do. I don't know when that was established, but that was something that is included. So there's some small weird things like that might vary from town to town, but overall, just routine things you would do around the house. Some things require a permit, some things don't, and that's all based on the residential building code. And it's not something that we as a town determine that it does or does not, or the building inspector would not determine that. It's all based on that document.
Okay.
And we're not, this doesn't change that at all. And at the end of the day, we don't know what people are going to get a permit for. The homeowner goes and submits whatever information about whatever project they're doing. So if what they are describing in their permit application requires a permit, then it does. If a little bit more than what they thought, then it does. But it's not, the town or the company taking the permit application, they're not going to assume that they're doing something more than what they're telling them. So we're not, bless you.
Good Lord.
That's a big one. And I think there's a fine line, Ryan, between most people, whether it's in Pawleys or Georgetown or Atlanta or wherever, people are going to have work done. They're going to go replace a water heater. They're going to, do work in their bathrooms, and we're get or done kind of people, and there's a fine line between that and doing a major renovation where you absolutely should get a permit. And I think that's where some of the concern is there going to be more, I guess, policing, so to speak? It's a wrong term of, oh, okay, that person has a, plumbing truck in their driveway. Are we going to call, town hall and have someone go over there and ask them what they're doing and why they didn't get a permit? Maybe I'm wrong, but do you envision any more stringent regulation or policing of who is or isn't getting permits? Obviously, a third party has some motivation to drive more permitting and more revenue, but how do you see that? How would you see that playing out in this new world scenario?
To me, that's more code enforcement. I mean, nothing again is going to change about that. I mean, right now, the only way that Georgetown County, if they're out here and they see something going on, they know it needs a permit,
Right.
and there's not books. They're the ones that are going to go take the initiative to go approach those property owners, not us. I mean,
Right.
we don't do anything to deal with that. If I see something that I think might need a permit, and that they're working without one, I'll just mention it to Stephen Elliott, the head of the Georgetown County Building Department, and say, hey, next time you're around, if you might want to go drive by and check it out. But other than that, I don't get involved. And the same would be with this. I mean, these folks, they're not going to be doing any of that. They're not going to go do work anywhere other than where there's a building or work going on where an inspection is required. And that's because a
permit is submitted. If a permit is submitted, that's when they get involved. Other than that, unless they hear something from you, which is what happens now, it's not going to be any different.
Nothing changes. I mean, absolutely nothing is going to change as far as how it works. When a permit is needed, when someone wants to do some work, instead of going to the county, they're just going to go to this website or get one through this company. Permit will be issued. When an inspection is required, instead of the county coming out and do the inspection, this company will come out and do the inspection, and that's it. There's no following up on people. If I see a dumpster in someone's driveway, I don't automatically assume that they need a permit, unless it's something that it's like, oh, wow. I mean, it's pretty obvious that they need a permit and they don't have one. And it's not me trying to be a hard ass. It's because I want to save them from doing something that might, be more trouble for them down the line. The only one that I ask the police department if they ever see it to kind of let me know that they saw it is driveways. Because the last thing I want to do is have someone go put a driveway in of concrete and then have to tell them, that's not allowed and you got to rip it out. It's the last thing I can do.
Which did recently happen, correct?
Just had one 2 weeks ago. I made them rip out like 90% of a driveway, and they admitted it. We didn't know that, and which that's a whole nother discussion for another time. But I mean, it's not that, and when I tell 20, 25 people who look for want to do a concrete driveway, and I tell them you can't do that because the local law says you can't, and they say, okay, well, we'll make it out of gravel, and they go on and they do it the right way. Well, if they see their neighbor put in a concrete driveway and we allow it to sit there and let them get away with it, what does that say to the people who we didn't let do it? So we have to enforce it.
Hey, Ryan, Ryan, sorry to interrupt you, not to bring any more attention to that scenario. That's the last thing I want to do. But in that example, if they were going to, did they get a permit to put in the driveway to begin with or not?
No.
Probably not. Okay. But if they had gotten a permit, did they contact Georgetown County first to get a permit? Yes.
That's what they would
do,
go.
right? Okay.
Yep.
So I guess my point there, what you said that stuck with me a little earlier is, as far as enforcement, is there some unique codes to Pawleys Island that are not the same in Georgetown County? Obviously in Georgetown County, you can pave a concrete driveway. In Pawleys Island, you can't, in that scenario. So obviously Georgetown County should know that, but that's not in their, again, that's not on their dashboard. I mean, they're not thinking about that. So how would a third party help that scenario, or would it?
It would definitely help. And that's another thing that I failed to kind of mention is, you're right. Right now, the county does know, and they've had to be repeatedly reminded of our small quirky things that we have. But the volume they do, we're not even like 1% of what they do. So if it comes through and someone's in a driveway, they've probably done 300 permits since the last time they did something with a Pawleys Island driveway. So they forget about it. So they don't make a point of it. And that person goes and they do all these other things and the driveway is part of it and it slips by. And then it's like, well, why didn't they let us know when we went to get the permit? That's because they deal with all these other things. If we do it ourselves, everything's gonna have to flow either through me, for me to tell them you have to go get it through this company. This company is gonna be working for us, and every permit that gets issued through the town of Pawleys Island, these are the weird handful of quirky things that really only apply to the town, and you're not gonna find too many other places. You got to stress the fact, and we have to have it on our permits, or because right now I think they just use the same Georgetown County permit application and just use it for the town. We would have our own. So these things that should be noted that might not be the case other places, we need to be very prominent and displayed. So whoever gets a permit, they know that this is not allowed here, or this is what you have to do, to be able to do X or whatever it is they want to do. And it'll be pointed out so that they will be very aware of what they can and cannot do. So I think it'll be very helpful.
But you're saying, so in the scenario of the concrete driveway and Georgetown County is notified for the permit, you don't necessarily get notified of that simultaneously, do you? Or do you?
When a permit is pulled?
When a permit is requested of Georgetown County to pour a concrete driveway, are you notified of that at the same time? Or, or simultaneously?
After a permit is issued. Requested. So what happens typically, most people, when we're doing new driveways, it'll be part of new construction. So the driveway will just be kind of on the plan. No one thinks twice about what it's made of. And they got a permit to do the whole project, but they never really called out what the, what material they're going to use to do the driveway. And the county's not really paying attention to that because they don't really care what it's made of because everything flies in the county. Right. But if it's within the town, well, not everything flies. So they have to make a point of it before they issue that permit.
Okay.
And that kind of stuff.
Go ahead, Gary. In question, was that new construction?
Yes.
So a permit.
Yeah, it was new.
So a permit. Right. You asked earlier if a permit was granted. A perfect permit for just for the driveway wasn't required. It was all part of the overall picture.
I mean, most people don't require, there's no permit that's anywhere else. No one's going to require you to even get a permit for a driveway. But most of the time, when someone issues a set of plans for new construction, they'll have on there specifically what the driveway is, what it's going to look like and what's going to be made out of. For this one, there was no notes of any kind on there. So there was nothing saying what it should have, what they were planning to use. But this is a builder who has built 4 houses here in the last 3 years. All the other houses, he had used a gravel driveway. Never crossed my mind that I'd have to have a conversation with them specifically about the driveway. And they went and they poured concrete. But all I'm saying is, if we were to do the permits ourselves, it would be, we'd make a point to highlight the fact that any driveway would have to be made out of something other than concrete.
Right. What other questions y'all have about this? I appreciate the explanation, because the other thing I heard is, or maybe you didn't say it this time, but when we talked before, we kind of answer to the county, right? I mean, when there's a building permit requested and or issued, we're dependent on the county to follow through and do that efficiently. With this third party, they answer to us, correct? I mean, they will be working for the town to make sure that we hold them accountable to the service level, the professionalism, the website, all of that stuff. That is certainly another consideration, I think, in this. And again, it probably sounds like I'm advocating for it. I'm making sure that we understand that there are some real benefits to it, but I want to hear some of the downsides or questions. If you guys have any, let's get that out there and let's move on after that. Any other thoughts or comments?
It looks to me like it's pretty user friendly as far as the way this one that we're looking at from the town of Inman, and I think that takes a lot of the burden off of us by having this system in place. And I'm for it personally. I think it's a good system.
Rocky, Sarah?
I agree with
Gary?
Ashley.
I would agree. It makes it, it looks easier, for sure. I go back to, I don't see anybody really requesting it. And also I would, at the time when we did the survey, all the property owners, one of the issues came up, and I think we all recognized we hadn't had the best relationship with Georgetown County. It was as good a relationship as we would like to. And it seems like we need a really good relationship for a lot of reasons, whether it be cooperating with the sheriff's department, or in this case with the building department, that maybe right now taking stuff from them doesn't send the best message. The other thing I'd like for everybody to consider, a lot of you guys know, y'all know builders. Go ask the builders, because that's really who interacts with the building department in Georgetown the most. That's who the contractors have to schedule inspections, and if they're getting them on time, that's a big deal. If they're not, then that's a big deal as well. So Ashley, I know you know a lot of builders on Pawleys. Ask them, are they having any issues with Georgetown County Building Department, or the inspectors showing up on time? When you shift to one guy who is, I don't know his experience with building codes on the coast, which is different from inland, certainly different from Inman or Greenville or some of those upstate towns, is, how close is it going to be? Because if you're building a house and you need to pour cement tomorrow morning and you need it inspected, you got to have somebody there to get there quickly to get it inspected. And all those are issues that, again, if we talk to some builders, we'll find out that one way or the other, is the county doing a great job? Do they feel like they have access when they need it, or do they not? And the builders are important, but that's actually who's getting stuff done for the homeowners or the property owners.
Mm-hmm.
I think
That's a
the
good
only
point.
complaints that I've heard were not the inspections, Gary, but actually the permitting process and the plan review. I mean, to make an appointment to try and see somebody to talk about, it was somebody that was going for a variance, so it was difficult to begin with. And they said it was just endless trying to get with Georgetown County. Now, that had nothing to do with inspections or anything else, but I know that they've had a pretty good turnover in the building department.
Well, I mean, I know that Stephen Elliott has been there for a long time. He's probably been there for at least 15 years. Before that, Robert Cox is there for 25 years.
Right. Well, I think your points are well taken, Gary. I think we're not going to make a decision on this tonight. We're getting together on December 10th. I'd like to have a little bit more discussion about it, but I think we have some homework between now and then. And one of them is, Ryan, it might be worthwhile just to have a conversation with Stephen Elliott or anyone else in Georgetown County, just to get a sense for it. I mean, if we pulled that and we decided to go through a third party, is that any skin off your back? How does that feel? And I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have, just to get some feedback from them. We haven't made that decision. How does that feel? Does that bother you? Or is it one of those scenarios, well, that great, works for us. It's less for us to do. And you guys do what you got to do. There's going to be a scenario where there's going to be a response that you can share with us. And then secondly, I think we need to get some, like you said, Gary, some feedback from some of the builders as to how's the county doing. I mean, as far as, like you said, the inspections versus the actual issuing of the permits. Because there's a lot of builders around. There's plenty of people we can ask that question of. So if we can discuss these two items on December 10th and maybe at our next December meeting, make a decision one way or the other to either start at first of the year or punt.
Ryan,
good?
I do have one more question. Did
Sure.
the inspectors come out of Roebuck, South Carolina?
No. So they've got, they're statewide. There's other companies that do this same type of work. Robert Cox, who Gary talked about earlier, he was the head building official for a long time. He now works for a company who, that's what he does in his, he works as an independent contractor for one of these companies, and he does the building inspection. So they told me that their representative, their inspector that they would use lives in Conway, and that whatever inspection requests that they had for a new construction, that they would be able to make it there within a 24-hour period. So if you needed it on Wednesday afternoon, as long as you made it before Tuesday afternoon, they would be able to make it and be there when you requested them. So that would not be an issue. Now, that's the beauty of having an independent contractor work for you. They can promise us all these things, and after about 6 months to a year, they're just not fulfilling their promises. Then we cut ties and we move to another one, or we maybe go back to the county. They'd be held accountable.
Right. Okay. Good discussion. Appreciate it, everybody. We've got two assignments between now and December 10th. Let's move on. Item 6, comments by council members. Anybody have any thoughts or comments they want to share? I will say that John Hildreth was initially going to be on the agenda for tonight to discuss progress on the ARB. I know he had a family issue last week and planning. They didn't meet last week, did they?
No.
They were going to. Yeah, had to reschedule. And so I'll just say this. I certainly support their efforts where they're headed with this. It's not going to be easy. There's a lot of reasons why this may not work, but I feel like the majority of property owners on Pawleys Island would like to see some level of architectural review. John sent a document from 2004. He sent a document out to the Planning Commission, which laid out some of what a Pawleys Island look is. This is not the 2004, but this is some of the things that he sent out. What is a Pawleys Island look? Classic simple lines of wide covered screened and open porches, steeped roof pitches, single dormers and shed dormers on each side of the steep roofs, double hung windows, unique wood look, et cetera, et cetera. And it goes on to say in the same document, it talks about, so the requirements, potential requirements would be minimum 8x12 roof pitch, porches allowed on the first floor. And that certainly would warrant some more discussion because I'm not sure how well that would go over, but we'll see. Second floor heated square footage shall not exceed 80% of the first floor square footage. And that would be intended to avoid the big box look, which I think we all, or I won't say all, a lot of us don't particularly care for, may not have a place on Pawleys. First floors must have a porch that will occupy 50% of the heated square foot perimeter. That's an interesting one. But what I wanted to share with you is in 2004, there was a memo sent out to property owners that talked about working on an architectural review board, encouraging efforts to preserve our island's architectural heritage. We have a great variety of design, but it ties together in total might be described as a low country or beach cottage look, or some other term you might prefer. And it goes on to say, the Pawleys look is pitched roofs, roof materials, shakes, architectural shingles, dormers, double hung windows, shutters, wraparound porches, offsets in the facade, watchtowers or widow walks, et cetera, et cetera. So this has been around for a while. And it says at the bottom, since Pawleys has no architectural review board, appearance standards are voluntary and compliance depends on the cooperative efforts of our property owners. We hope you will agree that as a good neighbor, your project should, quote, blend in rather than stand out. So this has been going on a while. Voluntary offers particular challenges because when things are voluntary, there's really no, obviously, mandate or requirement to do the right thing. So to me, there's two challenges to this. One is, let's agree on what the Pawleys look is and what is palatable. Also, is it going to be proposed or suggested or mandatory? And the other thing that I talked to Gary about earlier today was, depending on your lot size, there may have to be different architectural guidelines for you. You know, what your lot size is, or is it north end, central, and south part of the island. There's some considerations there because there's different looks and feels for depending on where you are on the island. So get some water here. Sorry. I think this architectural review board is important. I think it would be nice to keep them on the tracks. Once again, just like building permits, let's either do it and get it done quickly or decide to move on. But I'm in the camp that we need to do something, and we need to do something fairly soon. That's my comments.
Just have one quick one, Ryan. I want to thank the homeowners from Atlantic that sent in the note about their flooding concerns. And I would encourage other property owners who have flooding issues to send us notes or send us a communication. Let us know about your problems, because as we begin to work this issue on an island-wide basis, we want to make sure we're dealing with first things first and deal with the big issue areas initially.
Yeah.
So, I think that'd be very helpful to get your feedback from other property owners that are dealing with this problem.
Yeah, I agree. Anybody else? All right. Thank you all very much for your time and participation. I'll have a good evening, and we'll need an adjournment. Actually, we're going to need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Y'all take care. We'll talk soon.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.